In the 21st century, there are so many awesome ways of traveling. We could travel by boat, we could travel by plane. I'm pretty sure traveling by rocket ship isn't too far out, but traveling by car is definitely the most common mode of travel among young Western Australians. For most people, driving is just a way of getting from point A to point B, but many of us really enjoy driving cars. In fact, some of us enjoy driving our cars so much that we're willing to modify them to increase performance and improve the overall driving experience. What I didn't know is that there are a bunch of laws and legislations that affect the modifications that I want to do to my own daily driver. And I know that most of us that are enthusiastic about cars really don't want to hear about laws and legislations. They just seem to get in the way of where we are now to where we want to be. But knowing about them can help us to avoid unnecessary infringements and fines over modifications that otherwise might have been okay if they had been approved. In this video, we're going to talk about the codes and legislation documents that you need to be aware of if you're considering modifying your car, and we'll run through some of the more popular modifications that you might be considering to do to your daily driver and the laws that apply to them. And yes, this video is only going to talk about modifications that improve performance, but still maintain daily drivability. Here in Western Australia, light vehicle modifications are split up into three categories by the Australian government: minor, light, and complex modifications. Minor modifications are modifications that can be done without any kind of approval. They include mostly aesthetic things like paint jobs and sound systems, but they also include things like roof racks and sway bars, as well as your wheels and tires. Light modifications are those modifications that do not require pre-approval, but do need to be inspected by an authorized inspection station vehicle examiner. Most of the modifications that you might be planning would probably fall under this light category. They include modifications like upgraded brake systems, aftermarket suspension, aftermarket exhaust, turbo and intercooler upgrades, and yes, even an upgraded cold air intake. Complex modifications are those modifications that you would generally engineer yourself. They're not really modifications that you'd want to do to your daily driver, so we won't really be touching on those. The laws concerning the modification of your vehicle can be found in a couple different places: the Road Traffic Act of 2012, Road Traffic Regulations of 2014, National Code of Practice for Light Vehicle Construction and Modification, and the third edition of the Australian Design Rules for Vehicle Safety. All these documents are linked in the description below. But what do these laws have to do with the modifications that you're planning? Let's take a look. When it comes to engine modifications, replacing engine components with OEM parts does not require a certification. However, installing any kind of forced induction like a turbo or supercharger will require a pre-certification. In fact, any engine components that increase power by more than 20% of the original factory power will require prior certification. It's also important that any emissions control systems within your car remain intact. And when it comes to aftermarket exhaust, you're going to want to make sure that it is mounted properly as not to be less than 100 millimeters off the ground and that it extends clear to the back of the car. The Road Traffic Regulations of 2014 also require that your exhaust be no louder than 90 decibels when at idle, so keep that in mind when selecting your exhaust. If you're thinking about fitting a limited slip differential, you should be okay after an inspection. However, the common practice of welding your differential is definitely not allowed. Fitting adjustable coilovers or any kind of suspension modification that's going to lower the ride height of your vehicle does not need prior approval, but does need to be inspected after you've installed it. It's also important that you maintain at least 2/3 of the original suspension travel in either direction, and that you maintain at least 100 millimeters of ground clearance. When it comes to wheels and tires, your safest bet is to stick to the options available at the local tire shop, but if you're considering installing wheel spacers, those will require approval. When it comes to upgrading your brake system, their performance should match the size and weight of your car. A table of performance requirements can be found in Road Traffic Regulations of 2014, subsection 10, division 9, sections 335, 1 through 8. When it comes to body modifications such as body kits or spoilers, have a look at Part 4 of the Road Traffic Act of 2012, which details dimensions requirements in crazy detail. That's about all I can cover in 5 minutes. To summarize, you can find a list of modifications that you can do right now on the Department of Transport websites listed under minor modifications. These requirements are subject to change over time, as is the nature of law, but they're there to keep us and others on the road safe. Driving my car is personally my favorite way to travel. I love being in complete control of my journey, and I'm really glad that I had the chance to learn about the laws that affect what I really like to do. Good luck with modifying your daily driver. I hope that this video helped you to know everything that you need to know to stay on the right side of the law.